Trigger warning. This first story contains explicit and graphic depictions of torture and gore. Listener discretion is advised. This content may be distressing for some listeners, and it is recommended for mature audiences only. Skip to story 2 if you are sensitive to this. My name is Emily and I'm from Germany. I am 5'6" with hazel eyes. It's hard to decide where to start, so I will just run you through from the beginning, I suppose. 2 weeks ago I was out for a run before work and before the road got hectic with the heavy morning work traffic. There is a fog. I remember this distinctly because it was so thick that it made it hard to see about 10 feet in front of me. Before I knew it, a dark red SUV started to become visible through the heavy clouds. I don't know what happened here really, as it was all so fast. 1 minute I was running my normal route, the next I was grabbed and thrown into the SUV. I guess they used chloroform or something like it to knock me out. Because when I came to, I was in a solid white room with absolutely nothing in it but me. I don't know what was worse, realizing that I had been kidnapped, or the maddening essence of the dead and empty room I was being kept in. For 2 days I saw and heard no one, minus the terrified screams, pleas, and downright pitiful begging that escaped my mouth. Finally they came, but it was no blessing. I was taken to another white room with actual stuff in it, stripped down to nothing and washed like a dog, cold water and all. There were 3 men and 1 woman in the room. The woman just sat back and observed every now and again, writing something down. The men heckled me and tossed me around between them. Then they touched me, but blessedly the woman spoke up before it went any further. She had a very thick German accent. I remember she said for them to wait until it was my turn, that they didn't want to spoil anything. I was taken to yet another solid white room, but this one wasn't empty. There was a chair in the center, screwed into the floor, an empty box about the size of a coffee pot box, and a metal swivel table covered with a white cloth. Here I was plopped into the chair, my ankles and wrists tightly bound with heavy metal latches. I was terrified. I asked them what they were going to do with me, but no one spoke a word as they went about their tasks. I felt like an object to them, not a human just like them. Everyone left and once again I was alone. A whirring noise brought me out of the panic attack I was beginning to go into. I watched in horror as an extra-large television descended from above me and settled in against the wall directly in front of me. A man dressed like an old butcher from the 50s and a woman dressed like an old-fashioned nurse came in and uncovered the metal table, revealing a plethora of small tools. A scalpel, several other types of med-surg equipment, dental tools, and other things I didn't really recognize. I have never been so terrified in my entire life. My hell truly began when the screen lit up and a small group of people came up in their own chat bubbles. The butcher asked the nurse if everything was in order. She nodded and said in a German accent, "Yes, doctor, everyone is paid." He smiled and thanked the group of 6 on the screen. My body trembled beyond my control. "Very well then, let's begin," the butcher and doctor commented. The nurse walked over to the screen and turned up the volume. "What is your first request?" she asked the panel. The first person in line on screen said, "Bite her nipple, hard, then peel it off nice and slow." This is where I began screaming. They began attempting to put a ball gag in my mouth, but the man on the screen stated, "Let her scream." The nurse walked behind me, grabbing my breasts hard and sticking them out as far as she could. The butcher then leaned down and bit the right one. White-hot pain seared through my body. Just as the man wanted, I screamed. The nurse, whom I heard the butcher call Olga, brought a long, thin pair of strangely shaped tongs and a scalpel. The butcher took the scalpel, leaving the nurse with the tongs. She grabbed my nipple and pulled it out as far as she could. So far I thought she might rip it off. Then the butcher stepped forward and began to slice through the tender skin of my breast. I screamed and screamed, but my captors didn't even react. I tried struggling, but it only made things worse. In a matter of just a few minutes, as the butcher took his sweet time, I was left with no nipple on my right breast. I could feel warm blood leaking down my stomach and pooling underneath me. The nurse and butcher looked expectantly at the screen, awaiting their next order. I stole a glance at the man currently commanding my torture. He was just a normal guy. They all were. Out of the 6 men, only one looked slightly uncomfortable. They wore suits and ties and looked like professionals, each appearing to have just stepped out of the office. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'm not sure what I expected, but it wasn't suit and tie wearing office pros. My heart sank. If these guys were capable of this, then anybody was. Struggling against my restraints, determined not to suffer any longer, I cried out and cursed the men behind that damn television screen. I cursed the butcher and the nurse. I continued my tirade until I heard one of the men say, "Undo her and beat her against the walls." I looked back up in shock. Was there no end to their cruelty? Quickly, the nurse moved the cart of horror toys out of the room and returned to my side. Together, they removed my shackles and I was free. I bolted for the door but was yanked backward by my hair. Again, I screamed in pain, which seemed to please everyone but myself. Before I could even fall, the butcher swung me around, still holding by my hair, and slammed me into the wall opposite the door. I hit it hard, hard enough to knock the wind out of my lungs. Again, before I was able to even think of what to do, I was slammed into another wall, then another, and another, until the man with the request said it was enough for him. The butcher grabbed me by my upper arm and forced me in front of the screen. I have never felt so exposed, so vulnerable, so small in all my life. I prayed that they were done. The nurse stepped forward then and said, "You have 7 more minutes of paid time. What is your final wish for our little beauty here?" She gestured at me. There was silence for a moment as the men seemed to be deciding on what they wanted for the finale, but the request was nothing I had braced for. Assault her. I was floored. I begged and pleaded that they change their minds. To the butcher to please not, to the nurse as a woman, to please stop this. But my words fell on deaf ears, and the butcher seemed determined to oblige as I heard the sound of his leather apron hit the floor and a belt come undone. He still held me by my arm. I struggled with all my might to get away, but I was jarred when the hulk of a man turned and backhanded me right across my face. I nearly fell, and he used this to his advantage, throwing me the rest of the way to the ground, positioning me so that the men could see everything from a sideways view. "Make it rough," one of the men called. The butcher crawled over top of me and smiled. "With pleasure," he stated, wrapping one large beefy hand around my throat and pushing down. By the time he was finished with me, my screams had diminished to pathetic-sounding sniffles and begging. I just wanted this torture over with. I wanted them to kill me. And this was the moment that he would. Sure, that would be the men's last request. I was shocked to hear them say to keep me alive for another time, and that they would likely be back. The man lifted me off the ground, licked my ear, and whispered, "Looks like it's your lucky night, sweetheart." I was far too exhausted from the pain and shame to fight back. I just let them take me, praying that they would end the torture. Unfortunately, I was immediately shoved back into my little white room and left there until they decided that if I put this information on the normal internet, it would bring in more customers. Please stop watching these videos. Please stop visiting the deep web. This isn't a joke. It's people's lives, and they shouldn't be destroyed, tortured, or killed for the amusement of others. I already know that I won't leave this place alive, or intact, or for that matter. But maybe I can save someone else from this fate. Maybe you. This happened only 2 days ago, and I am saying this now because I forgot about him. But he has messaged me. Now that's out of the way. This story isn't about a red room or any of that fake shit. Trust me, I have been on the deep web for about 3 years. Not once have I seen one of those things. I mean, I have seen videos of people getting killed, but not live feeds or anything. But the site I so happened to come across, the link was a bunch of random letters. And if you have used Tor or something along those lines, you know what I mean. This link was sent to me via email, and the email read this: "Click this if you dare." Now, I was thinking probably exactly what you were thinking right as you either heard or read that. Another damn troll trying to scare people. So I clicked the link. Nothing like I haven't seen before. Drugs, blood, cheesy sound effects. But I was sitting there laughing it off because I was thinking I guessed right. However, when I clicked on an image of weed or some shit, I was sent to another page, and out of the page I was in. Keep in mind I have a VPN, virtual private network, and also an IP scrambler for safety reasons. But when this sent me to this page, out of the 3 years I have been on the deep web, I have never had a site switch to a different site, so I thought I misclicked. But then it made me screen full screen a black web page. But when I clicked on my screen, it popped up an error message saying, "We are sorry, but we are afraid to tell you that you can't leave this page. We are sending you to an admin right now. Please wait." So out of pure curiosity, I stayed and let it load. Then a video popped up, or I should say a webcam. So I was thinking I was going to get to talk to someone about the site that was clearly fake. Then a person with a normal face, top hat, black trench coat, and black gloves appeared. Keep in mind that since stuff like this has happened before, I wear stuff that doesn't allow you to even see my skin color. Black gloves that go all the way up to my elbows. Yes, I know those are mostly meant for females, but I custom made mine so they have black widows crawling down them, so it looks pretty badass. Plain white hoodie, hockey mask, with H20 Delirious spray painted on it. He's my favorite YouTuber. And also I just keep the hoodie up. So when my webcam appeared, I wasn't that scared. There was no way he could see what I looked like. So just to piss him off, I got closer to the camera and said, "Can you see my face now?" That seemed to anger him, and he said, "Don't test me. You came to my site without an invite." After that, I went back in my chair and then said, "Okay, first of all, I got a link sent to me by email, and also your site is clearly fucking fake. I mean, who do you think you were going to fool?" That was when he said, "I use that fake webpage for people to click a link via clicking a picture, and then it sends them here. It seems you did that." I said, "I did that because I wanted to see how overpriced a bag of fake-ass weed was going to be." "Do not test me." I knew this prick wasn't going to do anything, so I so-called tested him again. I said, "I ain't your fucking teacher, but if you want a math quiz, I will be glad to give you one." Then he said, "That's it. I'm getting your address, and we are going to meet." I said, "Oh no, please don't. I don't want to meet you. You're too scary." To mess with him. Then I turned my IP scrambler and my VPN off so he could get my real IP because I had a little surprise for him. Then he typed my IP in a chat box that appeared, and I said, "Oh, good job, you found it. It seems you are getting the hang of this stuff. How would you like it if I gave you your IP?" He said, "Do it. More than likely you can't." So I used a couple of programs, and maybe 3 minutes later, both of us were doing our things when I said, "Got it. And also I got some other things too." So I typed in the chat box, his name, address, phone number, and also the same things but his sister's and his mother's address and phone number. I must have scared the living shit out of him. Oh God, I wish you saw his face. I was laughing so damn hard, and when I was done he said, "I'm coming to meet you. You better prepare to die." I had some illegal weapons that I bought off the deep web mini Uzis, a shotgun with a drum mag, and also a very deadly military-grade sniper rifle. And then I said, "Oh, please come over. I really want to meet you." And then I moved to the left because the guns were sitting behind me, and in the dark so you couldn't see them from the angle my webcam was sitting. The light from my PC screen sent a bright light beaming at the wall where my guns were sitting up against. And keep in mind again, I live in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, so the nearest house is about 4 miles south or north of me. So I could shoot my guns and no one would hear them. I say this because of what he said next. "Those things are fake." And I said in a childish way, "Oh no, they're not." And then he said, like most people would say, "Prove it." So I took the sniper and then took the tripod and then hooked the sniper up to it and put it on there. I use this thing so many times that I know the difference metal and plastic make when they barely touch, let alone lock to each other. It seems he didn't know that sound. So normally by that point, the other 5 times this has happened to me during this year alone, normally scares the other people away because that shows them the gun is real. But he needed it to shoot to show him that it was real. So I put the sniper in my window and then shot a tree about half a mile away. And that was an easy hit for this sniper because the thing is such a beast when it comes to shooting. And then he said, "I ain't afraid of the sniper. The one I was afraid of was that shotgun." So I took the shotgun and shot that one too. And then he jumped and said, "Stop with the sound effects." And I said, "Okay, first of all, that isn't possible yet. And second, I want to meet your sister and your mother. What weapon wants to meet them too? And then he screamed, please don't. Leave them out of this. I will leave and we won't meet. I'm sorry for trying to scare you. And then just like that, he shut down the site and then never bothered me again until that message. The message reads, thank you for not attacking my family. I'm sorry for what I did, and I will let you know that the site is now shut down. And I only shot those weapons to scare him. I wasn't actually going to do shit. I ain't a murderer, I'm a hacker. For anyone wanting to visit the dark web, be careful for people like this. I've always been a curious person. That curiosity led me to the dark web. I'd heard stories, read articles, and seen enough YouTube videos to know it wasn't a place for the faint-hearted. But I was drawn to it, like a moth to a flame. One night I decided to take the plunge. I downloaded Tor, researched about VPNs, and made sure my digital footprint was as small as possible. I was ready to explore the underbelly of the internet. The first few sites were mundane, black markets, forums, and the like. But then I stumbled upon a site that sent chills down my spine. It was a simple page with a countdown timer and a chat box. The timer was ticking down from 60 minutes. Intrigued, I decided to stick around. The chat was filled with anonymous users, their messages a mix of excitement and fear. As the timer ticked down, the messages became more frantic. I felt a knot in my stomach, but my curiosity kept me glued to the screen. With 10 minutes left on the clock, a new message appeared in the chat. Prepare yourself. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't know what to expect, but I couldn't tear myself away. As the timer hit 0, the page refreshed. Now there was a new message. Welcome to the game. Below it was a list of instructions. It was a scavenger hunt of sorts. A series of clues leading to something. I didn't know what, but I was about to find out. The first clue led me to a hidden forum, the second to a cryptic blog post. Each clue was more challenging than the last, testing my knowledge of the dark web. I was in too deep to back out now. After what felt like hours, I reached the final clue. It was a string of numbers and letters, a Bitcoin address. I hesitated. This was it, the end of the game. But what would I find? I entered the address into a blockchain explorer and hit enter. My screen loaded a page showing a single transaction. The amount was small, but the message attached to it made my blood run cold. Congratulations, you've won the game. I sat back, my heart pounding. I'd done it. I'd won. But at what cost? I'd seen a side of the internet few people knew existed. I'd delved into the dark web and come out the other side. But the story doesn't end there. A few days later, I received an email. It was from an anonymous sender, and it contained a single line. The game is just beginning. I never went back to the dark web. I'd had my fill of its horrors, but I'll never forget the feeling of winning the game. It was a thrill, a rush of adrenaline I've never experienced before or since. So that's my story. A tale of curiosity, fear, and a game that I'll never forget. The dark web is a terrifying place, but it's also fascinating. Just remember, if you decide to explore it, be careful. You never know what you might find.